So thank you all for joining us today. My name is Ruth Nunez, and I am presenting the rocket pitch for Reparations Gardens. And I'm here with one of my team members, Gladys Santana, and we have an additional 5 team members who are also part of our board. And we have a bunch of volunteers, which is always great. So getting right into it, how many of you are familiar with the term food desert?
I learned it when I read your proposal.
Good. So I've asked a lot of people this question in this area, and one area that stands out is this picture right here in the center, which is Providence, Rhode Island. So it is a low-income area, inner city, urban, so we know all those things. What we don't know is a lot of areas in Lowell are actually food deserts as well, and where I currently live in Fort Worth, that's also a food desert. So I grew up in this area, study in this area, and currently live in these areas. And now, the green areas here on this chart show us these people do not have access to food or healthy food for 2 miles. The people in the orange area, 10 miles away is the nearest supermarket or somewhere that they can actually purchase healthy food. So now, with the problem with food deserts, it's also that these people do not have access to vehicles, so they can't actually get to these places as well. So we see a lot of, again, low-income families and a lot of people just struggling to get healthy food. Now, in food deserts, you also have, we also have a lot of fast food places, so that's another thing to keep in mind when you're in these areas. So these are partners in community gardening. So Mill City Grows, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with them, but they're actually in this area. So they're working to combat food hunger, just like this Tarrant Area Food Bank, which is in Fort Worth, and Trap Gardens, which is a friend of mine who has a few different community gardens in a few different areas. So these people are starting community gardens. They're trying to work with the different community organizations to get foods into these areas, and then they're also selling food from their community gardens to the people that live in these areas. So now there are still opportunities. 23.5 million people live in food deserts. So now when we saw those congested areas, a lot of those places, they don't know where to grow food. There's a lot of limited space for them. Self-sustainability education. So percentage of American adults with a high school diploma, you see here in an urban food desert, 24% of these people have, so you'll see the education opportunity there. They don't have a high school education, and a lot of these people are struggling to understand how a community is organized and how the education plays into that. And support systems, so a lot of these places are considered isolated places. It's really just, again, projects, urban communities that really don't have an organization. So now here's what is Reparations Gardens? So now here's where we come in. This is a lot that was actually sponsored to us by one of our partners. There's not a house on the lot anymore, and we're looking to take places like this and make them into community gardens. But beyond what our partners are doing, we're also looking to educate, revitalize, and organize. So using these spaces to actually work with our education system and find out ways where we can teach people from when they're young to grow food. We want to also educate adults. We want to make sure that people are understanding what it means to grow their own food, and that way we revitalize communities. So we want to make sure that the communities have energy behind them, that they feel like they're a part of a system that actually cares for them, and finally organize. So using these models that we create so that other communities can mirror these same communities, and then we can also have different ways to get food into these areas, basically giving people control back over their destiny. So, Community Pulse, we've done a lot of work in the communities. We're working with legal aid to obtain different grants. We've had sponsorship opportunities, and in the future we look to do fundraising events such as 5Ks and marathons. And with $5,000 from your wonderful organization, we want to start with our land that we have up there by putting in water and having our educational materials and having a few different social media campaigns started. So with that, do you guys have any questions for us?
Oh, absolutely. Nice job.
Thank you.
Yeah, nice.
Thank you.
Do you want to go first?
So, where would you get land? Do you have land already in Fort Worth, you had said?
Correct. We have land in Fort Worth. We also have, we have a few different people who are willing to sponsor land for us.
Okay.
And that's exactly what we start. So the model that we started with was Southside Renaissance, which is another organization. They're more networking and marketing, and they've actually sponsored that land for us. So we want to have a similar structure as far as so many people own land that they're not doing anything with.
Mm-hmm.
So let's use that land. We can provide volunteers. We already have a model. So we're starting the model with different community service agencies, and they're providing volunteers for us that we can just send send out to these vacant lands. We also have people in Providence that are willing to do the same, and so we want to work with Mill City Grows, so that way we have people, we really want it to be nationwide and use all of this vacant land that's just sitting there.
Great idea.
Tell me about the other models that are out there. I'm a little bit pessimistic that you're gonna put a community garden in a rundown area, and you're gonna go there the next day and everything's gonna be destroyed. Just because people might steal food, or, do you have a model that you wanna get as much food into that community as possible, right?
Correct.
That's the goal, right?
Correct.
Probably do it for free, I would think.
Part of
Or
it.
maybe charge people that could afford it and give it free to people who couldn't, right?
Right.
But how do you control this whole thing? I mean,
Mhm.
if it's gonna be sitting in an open lot,
There's equipment there too.
and there's
Right.
equipment and things like that. So how's it worked in the past with
Yeah.
other folks? How have they got over those?
Right, hurdles.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
one of the, so Tarrant Area Food Bank, I have really close connections with them, and one of the advice that they provide is actually have someone on site, and for us, it's perfect because the neighbor, he's actually willing to watch the property for
Sure.
us. But, so we want to have either someone on site or be very close to our police detail, so whoever the policeman is in our
I
district.
don't know.
And they'll know, right, because, so the area that we're in, it's actually an area where right now that land is being used for other purposes, illegal
Right,
purposes, yeah.
it's difficult.
Exactly, and so the neighbor, he's kind of become the patrolman of that area, so he calls the police if there's something wrong, or if he sees, illegal activity happening. So what we really want to do is have obviously some security measure in place. Either it's having partnerships. The main thing is having partnerships with the community members, and they'll watch it, because if they're invested in it, then they're actually going to care. If it's not, so that was part of my whole in my plan. I talked about door knocking and making sure that everyone is aware. So creating with them versus just me putting a community garden in there.
Right,
Yeah.
and obviously it's a huge community thing, everybody comes together for it.
Exactly, because part of it's not just about feeding a community, really, like the reparations part of it is really to repair the internal energy that's been sucked out of people. So it's not it's about having that connection to nature
Sure.
and having a connection to your fellow, people that you live with. In these communities, a lot of people don't even say hello to each other. And so that's like building that energy back up.
I can tell you just from my experience, my last company, we had offices in Buffalo, and that's the third poorest city in the country.
Mm-hmm.
There's 15,000 houses in Buffalo you can buy for $5 grand a piece.
Isn't that crazy?
If you were gonna,
Yeah.
15,000 homes. And if you wanted to set something up like this, the city of Buffalo would give you a land in 2 seconds
Yeah.
to do something like this. Absolutely.
Well, I'm gonna get in
Now,
contact with the city of
but-
Buffalo.
Here's the problem,
Tell me
Ruth,
more.
okay? 'Cause I got more for you, okay? I read your thing yesterday, I've been thinking through this all night, okay? Here's the problem, you can't grow in Buffalo in the wintertime,
Right.
right? So you do a lot of work there, so what I would love you to look into, I don't need you to change, I love everything you do, okay? Because I'm a guy who's grown a garden his whole life. I love it, I had all the neighborhood kids with me planting seeds, okay? I also just saw a special on, I think it was on National Geographic or one of these channels, about how they're taking inner city warehouses and turning them into hydroponic grow facilities. And they're making things like spring mixes and things like that. And they're nonprofits, and the community comes out and they all work together.
You can do it in the winter.
And you can do it in the winter. And it brings people together, and I can guarantee you a city will give you an abandoned warehouse to work with. It's something to think about in the future.
Yes,
This is-
as we
There's
grow.
more capital that's required for that.
There is
So-
more
That it
capital
is,
for
that's the
that,
thing, yeah.
but at the same time, they can generate revenue by selling to the community. By running a fast-growing
Yeah.
crop,
Right.
Okay.
like salad mixes
9
and
days.
spring mixes.
And I think that's
days.
what Milk Rose does anyway
Is that
in
what
this
they
area. Yeah, they are actually selling back to the community, and
And
they have
I
a
would,
similar
and
model.
you tier it, right? So the poor
Mhm.
folks get free food, but somebody who can afford it's gonna pay a little bit more, pay
Right.
something. Just an idea to think about. The technology is moving very quickly
Mhm.
with this whole hydroponic thing. And the thing that shocked me was it uses 95% less water than regular planting.
Mhm.
And there are other
And
costs
the water's
involved,
a
but,
big deal.
and the water's a
So
big deal.
escalating more
I know
costs.
it is.
You know what else is a big deal, honestly?
What?
The soil quality you're gonna have under that house.
Right, yes. Well, that's one thing we're all set with that. Because
Right.
the house is, with the house was
But
there
I'm
as an
just saying
example.
that
It's not there anymore.
the
It hasn't been
hydroponic
there
is a
for a while.
completely controlled clean
Controlled,
system
right,
for you.
that's true.
But this is a wonderful idea, honestly.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Um,
Thank
love
you.
that.
I'm
You
very
know,
excited about it.
there's so much about community building that is so important.
That's very true.
Absolutely, it's a wonderful cause, it's a great idea. And I'd love to be planting some vegetables with you, to be honest with you.
Oh, I can take all the volunteer help you want to give me.
You talked about bringing it nationwide.
Yes.
Have you, how is this, how would you scale this? Because a lot of it is you, I think, going door to door,
It has been.
right?
Yes.
So it'd be difficult to do that everywhere.
So, I started a partnership, it's kind of like everything's just falling into place, just patience on my end. But I actually fell into a partnership with Blue Zones. Are you familiar with them at all? Okay, so it's a nationwide initiative and a lot of money has been put into this program. And they just came to Fort Worth. So they have partnerships with different corporations, they have partnerships with different school districts, and working with them, I've actually been introduced to some principals in the Fort Worth area, and so that's how I've started the conversation of educational growing and whatnot. So the way that I'm envisioning it right now is working with them and showing them, okay, we can start maybe for now an after school program working with this one elementary school, which I'm thinking is Morningside Middle School. It's on the south side of Fort Worth. Like the south side of any city near you. But so working with them and then really growing from there and showing them, okay, this is the benefit that the children are getting. Maybe it's a once a week program. They come out to the garden, which is this location, this land is right up the street from the school. So it's very convenient for them to just walk over, and then from there kind of growing and and really just modeling that and using that for other areas. Because then what I'm thinking is, all right, so now I have this model, now I can pitch this to other people or teach this to other people, and we all come together, because I want it to be an organization. I don't want it to be people have, like a few of my friends have community gardens here and some have it there. We're all working together, we're all sharing ideas, and then it's like building a nationwide network versus just having individuals in different pockets doing their own thing.
So if you get those kids in for the after-school program or a part of the school program, then we get food back to the school for school lunches.
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
nice.
a great, exactly.
I honestly forget where it was, but I heard a story one time of a school bringing all the kids to a farm because they had no idea where potatoes came from and tomatoes came from. They thought it came from the supermarket.
But they can tell you what a Nike sign looks
Oh,
like.
yeah, right? I mean, literally, these kids
we're
have
really
no,
detached.
they have no idea
Yeah.
where some of that stuff comes from.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's really awesome. Nice idea.
Thank you.
Very good.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? Anyone else?
Nicely done, guys.
Thank you all.
Okay,
Thank
ladies.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.